Hey everyone, happy Friday. Hey, it's time for that weekly video where we highlight and update you on some of the things going on with our ministry and mission partners. The world is totally different than it was 6 weeks ago, and as we continue on, we wonder when things will get back to normal, so to speak. But one thing we want to remind you about is even in this different day, there's one thing that stays the same, and that's the gospel. And the gospel is still doing its work. It's still doing its redemptive work of touching the lives of people. And God is using different ones in different ways to do just that. As we continue down this road of the coronavirus, one of the things we have to be careful about is not losing our perspective. I notice behind me is our pool here at our home. I had just pulled the cover off of it a few days ago, and I'll be honest with you, when I took that cover off, it had been on there for several months during the winter. The color of the water is not what it is right now. In fact, it was very green and yucky looking. And I had to take some certain steps. I had to do some things to get that water here to the color that you see now, the beautiful blue color. Our lives sometimes can be like that pool. There are things that can happen and come into our lives that cloud things up, make it cloudy, change the color of our lives, and we lose perspective. One of the things I would like for us to be reminded about is what God's Word tells us about that and how to keep that perspective that He has for us. In 2 Corinthians, in chapter 4, Paul writes these words that help remind us about the perspective we should have as followers of Jesus. Listen to what he says. So we do not lose heart. Though our outer self is wasting away, our inner self is being renewed day by day. For this light, momentary affliction is preparing for us an eternal weight of glory beyond all comparison, as we look not to the things that are seen, but to the things that are unseen. For the things that are seen are transient, but the things that are unseen are eternal. As time continues to slip by and days turn into weeks, and now weeks have turned into a month or more of the COVID-19 crisis, it is easy for us to lose perspective. But I want to encourage you to take some steps and continue to take some steps in your life so that your perspective stays clear, just like the water behind me in the pool. One of those things involves continually looking at God's Word. What does God have to say? And what is God saying to you during this time? So let's be sure to all continue to be consistent in reading our Bibles and spending time in God's Word each day. The second of those is prayer. I want to encourage you to continue to be praying for your family, praying for your neighbors, praying for your church, praying for our county, our community, praying for your country, and especially the leaders that have the responsibility of guiding us through this time. And of course, don't forget to pray for yourself, because we all need to have that, gain God's perspective, and often that perspective comes through prayer. And the third thing I would encourage you in helping maintain the perspective that God has for us is to be staying connected to others. Now, I know we've got to keep our social distancing, and I know that we can't have gatherings at our home, much less gatherings at the church at this time. But we can still stay connected and use the technology that's there for us to do that. It's not the same as being there in the physical presence of someone, but it is that which helps us keep up with one another. It helps us to encourage one another. In fact, each Thursday, our small group has a Zoom meeting where we can see one another, talk to one another, share with one another, challenge one another, encourage one another. And let me say for you to do the same. And the final thing is to be reminded about what we read just a moment ago. God tells us that the perspective of our world, this perspective of looking at things from the here and now, is not the clearest perspective. The perspective that we look at the world at is through the eyes of God, the eternal perspective. And yeah, we're reminded that those things are challenging right now. As followers of Jesus, we have a future that is different, a future filled with hope, a future that is forever. Paul says that they are momentary afflictions or momentary difficulties. They're momentary. They're not forever. So be reminded, just as this water behind me, I had to take some steps to turn it from green to blue. There are some things that we need to keep in our lives so our perspective stays as it should, that we continue to have God's perspective on not only where we find ourselves at this moment, but in the days ahead. Hey, let me tell you about a couple of things that are still going on or are going on. Our ministry and mission partners are still very busy about doing gospel work. I just recently this week had the opportunity to listen in on a Zoom meeting from one of our ministry partners. It's the FCA of South Alabama. They're doing a great job of continuing to stay in touch with the coaches and encouraging them as they work through a different time, and encouraging them as they have the opportunity to interact with students. You know, the FCA does a fantastic job of helping student athletes come into contact with the gospel and growing in the gospel. They work with the coaches, they work with the student athletes, both on the middle school, high school, and collegiate level. And I'm grateful for our partnership with them. And they're actively at work, even during the COVID-19. I also want to remind you to be praying for one of our church plant partners that is located in New Orleans. We've mentioned them several times, but it's a difficult time there. As you know, New Orleans has become one of the epicenters of the COVID-19 crisis, and so they're ministering in a very tough situation. Jason Bedell is our church plant partner there with Living Hope Vietnamese Community Church. So I want to encourage you to continue to be praying for Jason and his team there. They're doing a lot of great work in ministering to their community. They're looking for ways to practically care for the people, to show God's love, to demonstrate that, as well as communicating the gospel. And so pray for them as they minister there in their particular area. We also have another church plant partner who's in the process of actually getting ready to move to his location and begin the process of launching a church. And that's Dustin Lee, and he's going to be moving to Atlanta and working there in the close to the downtown area of Atlanta as they work with City View Church there. Obviously, with the things that have happened recently in the last weeks, month of the COVID-19 crisis, some of their plans have had to been delayed and actually some of them redirected. So I encourage you to be praying for Dustin as he and his family prepare to move to Atlanta to lead their team there and giving a gospel presence in the city and in a place in that city that is in desperate need of it. I also want to thank you for your faithfulness and your generosity in giving financially to Dayspring and to Mission Forward. As we've mentioned before, the Mission Forward Mission Fund allows us to be able to partner with many different ones in getting a gospel witness and providing a gospel presence in places outside of our own community, even as we seek to do that here as well. So even during this time of COVID-19, even during the time of limitations, restrictions, even during a time of interruptions, even during a time of having to develop a new normal, so to speak, the gospel is still at work. And as you pray and as you give, you are helping carry that gospel work out. I'm so looking forward to the time where we get to gather together again in our Sunday morning times. I'm looking forward to the time of us being in the same room together, being a time to say our hellos and give handshakes, if we have those in the future, in the lobby area. A time to be able just to see one another face to face. That's going to be a great time. But in the meantime, let's continue to keep a perspective, the perspective of God, that even though there's difficulties now, they're not forever. And we have a God who's greater than those difficulties, the God of the gospel. So I look forward to seeing you soon. Please know that your pastors are praying for you, and if we can help or assist in any way, please reach out to us. You can do that through email, connect@dayspring.church, or call the church office, 251-633-0250. Have a great weekend. God bless.